Sometimes things happen in life that just don't make any freaking sense. Things don't go according to plan, and for the life of you, you cannot figure out why the heck things panned out the way they panned out. And I'm sure you can relate to this because it happens to every single one of us. And I've started to think about this a lot because there's a lot of things in my life that I don't necessarily regret, but I wonder. It's those what ifs that are always in the back of your mind that kind of keep you up at night. You know, you're like, what if this would have worked out differently? Or what if I did this? Or what if I didn't do that? And you can what if yourself to death because you'll never know the answer to that. But what I've come to realize is that things work out exactly the way they're meant to at exactly the time they're supposed to. So let's take dating, for example, because we've all been on dates. We've all probably fallen in love. We've met, someone special, and we thought they were the one. Our whole lives revolved around them. We thought about them 24/7. We called them all the time. We talked about them all the time. And then you break up. And that sucks. It sucks to have your heart broken. And when you have your heart broken, you think about that person even more than you did before. And it's one of those cycles, just like what I'm talking about, where you get stuck in the what ifs. What if this worked out? She was the one. She's the only person for me. She was perfect. All these beliefs that we formed around this relationship and around this person, all of a sudden are completely shattered. And we can't fathom why that could have happened. Like, why did it go this way? Why didn't it work out? Why couldn't we still be together? And for a lot of people, we can get stuck on that for months, years, or even decades. But how many of you have been through that and fast forward, 10, 20 years from now, and all of a sudden you're perfectly fine? You met somebody else, you're completely content. Maybe you're alone and you're happy alone. Maybe you found peace. Maybe you found something even better that fulfills you and makes you even happier than you were when you were in that relationship. And then somebody comes along and you get an update about that person's life, the person you were in the relationship with. And it turned out it was an absolutely tragic update. The way their life turned out and the way things panned out for them was absolutely horrible. And you're just thinking in the back of your mind like, man, I really dodged a freaking bullet. I know you can relate to that because I've been through that several times myself, probably more times than I can actually count, where something didn't go my way and I was completely devastated by it. And then years down the road, I was sitting there thinking like, I'm glad this worked out the way it did. And if you think about a lot of things in life, I think a lot of things in life actually pan out that way. Even when you think you've been dealt a bad hand, in a lot of cases, it could actually be a good thing if you really think about it. And I'll give you another example, something that happened in my life, and something I just recently talked about is the fact that I didn't invest when I was young. At like 20 years old when I entered the workforce, I just didn't invest. It's not something I thought about because I was focused on getting out of debt. So I basically saved my money, and investing simply wasn't a priority. Now, fast forward 20 years later, I'm 40 years old now, and I finally started dipping my toes into investing. And when I did, I realized that I kind of freaking screwed up, because if I would have invested back then, I think about how much further along I would be, how much I could have diversified and built my portfolio. And all these things start running through my mind. But let's think about this on the other side of that, because had I invested and things went the opposite direction, maybe I would have lost all my freaking money. And at 40 years old, maybe I'd be starting over from scratch because the markets tanked and I lost all my money I put in there. Or maybe I would have put money in there and the markets didn't tank, but it would have been money that I pulled away from the money I was funneling into trying to get out of debt, because I had student loans, I had a credit card to pay off, and then I eventually built a house and had to pay that off. So I had all this debt that I didn't want hanging over my head, and without that additional money, maybe I'd still be in debt. Maybe I'd still be paying on my house and my student loans. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to walk away from the workforce at 39 because I wouldn't have been able to save as much money. Maybe I would have been a little too dumb, young, and naive back then to invest smart, because now that I'm a little older, I'm not taking as many significant risks, we'll put it that way. I'm going after stuff like real estate, things that I can buy that will appreciate, but that can also make me money while my money's tied up in that thing. So if you think back about your life, think about some of the things that you regret doing, some of the things that you what if to death. And think about how those things might have actually been a good thing, because I can tell you from experience, there's a lot of things in my life that fit into that category. And again, we can what if ourselves to death, but we'll never know the answer. The best thing that we can do is accept that things happen the way they did and just keep pushing forward. And that's the key thing here, is that you have to find gratitude in everything. Find gratitude in the things that you have, but even more importantly, find gratitude in the things that you don't have, because those things might have had the most profound impact on your life more than anything else, whether you realize it or not. So even though there's things in life that suck and don't always make sense, there's failures, there's mistakes, there's regrets. Be grateful for those things, because those experiences, those are the ones that forge us into the person we'll eventually become. They make us better, they make us stronger, they make us more resilient, and they just make us a better person overall. And really what this all boils down to is perception. You can paint these things in a negative light, you can dwell on them, you can what if yourself to death, you can let them control you, and you can let them get you down, but that is not going to get you anywhere. What you can do instead is realize that these things happen for a reason, and that reason is likely so that you could avoid something that is much, much worse. But even better than that, it's so that you could learn from that experience, grow as a person, and become stronger. And that's what I found to be true for myself, because there are so many things that have happened in my life that I didn't think were in my best interest. But looking back on that, those things that were terrible at the time turned out to be some of the best things that's ever happened to me. And a prime example of that is several years ago, I had my health completely destroyed, seemingly out of the blue. And that experience was horrible. It left me on the brink of death. I was failed by the medical industry. And eventually, I took matters into my own hands and I fixed myself. And because I went through all that crazy stuff with my health, I am so much better off. So even though that experience was one of the worst times of my entire life, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, if I had a chance to go back, I wouldn't change a single thing, because it's led me here. It's put me on this path. It has essentially shaped me into the person I am today, which is a much stronger, much more resilient, much better person overall. So think about the things in your life that are like that you can find gratitude in. Think about things that you can shift your perspective on, and instead of dwelling on them, find gratitude in them. Because the more things we can be grateful for in life, the happier we're going to be, and the more positive our life is going to be overall. So be sure to share your story down below. Let me know if there's things in life that didn't pan out the way you wanted, and if later on down the road you found out that it was actually the best thing that could have possibly happened. As always, I appreciate each and every one of y'all more than you could possibly know. This tribe, this community is growing every single day, and it's an amazing thing to witness. Be sure to stay tuned, because it's only going to get better.